And Hester is going to run it out past the 40 into Giants territory. He is going to go all the way. Touchdown, Chicago.
Trying to find somebody open and throws an interception. And it's Charles Woodson's 55th of his career.
Dives for the touchdown, San Francisco.
I want to play desperately, and I'm going to try to drive everyone nuts till they give me a shot.
Favre threw an almost impossible 336 career interceptions.
See that?
Yeah. We have here the Brett Favre interceptions calendar.
It's the lovable kicking bear doll. And guess what? It comes with its own goalpost. Isn't that neat?
Double doink.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Cut the Cheese, Poke the Bear, Roast the Niner. We are talking NFL postseason football. The Super Bowl is next week, and ladies and gentlemen, the matchup is not what anybody wanted. For the first time in a long time, I have heard more groans about the Super Bowl than any kind of cheers. I don't think anybody could have predicted that the Philadelphia Eagles were going to be here 8 weeks ago. And I think everybody figured the Kansas City Chiefs were probably going to go, but really didn't want it. Are they the new New England Patriots? We don't know yet. But as far as our teams go here on the show, we've got some coaching changes on the Chicago Bears, some coaching changes on the San Francisco Niners, and of course, the good old Pack have lost a couple coaches, it sounds like, to positions available across the league. Let's go ahead and start out from the highest draft pick position. Lord Uther, tell us what the Chicago Bears are up to in their offseason so far.
Anytime I can get running with Bieniemy to coach my running backs, that's a reference to running with. Anyway.
Nice.
Anytime you. Come on, that's an old Sports Center thing. Let's go.
Yes, it is.
Anyway. Yes, it is. I'm very, very happy with what the Bears have done. I feel like this is, I know, hey, every once in a while we can all be stunned by what happens. But like the coaching change, obviously I like all the coaches that are being brought in here. And now it's just a matter of, is everyone going to buy into this new experience that's being set up? If we get some linemen here, especially on the O-line, I think we could do some damage next year. But here we go again, where we're building up all this hope and hype, and is it really going to happen? Supposedly this is going to be a little bit of a process, and we're just supposed to trust in it, and those playoff wins will start happening, and then we're Super Bowl bound. 5 years. No, 3 years. 3 years, Super Bowl. Bears.
It seems like
take on social media and see what happens.
Seems like a Dallas Cowboys-esque prediction, but I'll go with it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, the one thing the NFL has done to usurp baseball's former position as America's game and, the all-American game is that they can make, we have the Super Bowl coming up here, but they can make the off-season seem just as important as anything going on from week to week. What with free agency and the draft and all of these things, it feels like even when the NFL's not happening, it's still happening. And the same can be said for all of these shufflings of coaches and coordinators and the like. The 49ers, as we said, 6-11 last year, very disappointing to the faithful. They needed to make some changes. They needed to get better in some, basically all across the board, if you're being honest. The most glaring from week to week, one of them was the special teams. So they removed, fired, retired their former coordinator, and they went out and they got Brant Boyer, who, for people who pay attention to such things, was unanimously praised by the entire cast of the Pat McAfee show when it was announced. Pat McAfee on ESPN being a former special teams player himself. Mr. Boyer was the coordinator special teams for the Jets for 8 seasons, 2016 to 2024. And he has a reputation of being on the ball, aggressive. The New York Jets, as you know, have had a long playoff drought and have not been particularly competitive from year in to year out. But apparently their special teams, by the metrics, are pretty good. And this is a well-regarded hire around the league. But now he's just got to meet expectations and exceed them. We also, apparently, the 49ers think the Jets are the future, because not only did we get their special teams coordinator, we hired their former head coach. Robert Saleh reunites with the 49er defense. Several of the players who have been on this squad played for Saleh the first go-round, including all-world linebacker Fred Warner and safety Isaac Tufanga and so forth. Now, there's still expected to be some defensive free agency losses. Chavarius Ward could be on his way out, the corner. Dre Greenlaw, another stud linebacker, could also be out. So there may be some missing pieces that they need to fill in through free agency in the draft later this spring. But people like Saleh. They liked him the first time. He kind of put the 49ers defense in the Kyle Shanahan era on the map. And then D'Amico Ryans, before he became the coach of the Houston Texans, he sort of was able to sustain it. And then, like everything else, as these guys kept getting hired away for head coaching positions, you had to fill the ranks. And the two coordinators who followed Saleh and D'Amico Ryans, for whatever reasons, just weren't able to replicate the same intensity and success that the previous squads had shown. So we'll see. Is it a sequel? Sure. Do people have a sort of jaundiced view of sequels at times? Sure. But like I said, he knows the building. He knows several of the key components. His reputation's always been on defense. And the Jets, during his tenure, it wasn't necessarily the defense that was, full of holes, in so much as that they really couldn't get anything going on the other side of the ball with Zach Wilson and then Aaron Rodgers and so forth. So, again, I think I'm a little more measured in my optimism than Lord Uther and the Bears. I think the Bears do have the kind of potential on paper. Looks like next year's Commanders team, who thought the Washington Commanders would be fighting it out for the NFC Championship, a game away from the Super Bowl. And if we're being honest, a game that they kind of shot themselves in the foot in so much as the Eagles won. Now, you can look at a gaudy score where the Eagles put up, I don't remember, 55 points. And that says to you, wow, that was a blowout. But a lot of those, I think at least 21 points of that game were direct results of Washington miscues or turnovers. In fact, I think or maybe I'm conflating that with Buffalo. I'm conflating that with Buffalo, where they went for it on 4th and 1 and didn't get it, and then Kansas City went down and scored and basically never relinquished the lead. But again, the Commanders made so many errors in that game, from special teams fumbles to just general, not converting. They were very aggressive on 4th downs, and they started initially to convert them, and then later in the game, when the rubber meets the road, they weren't able to run through the tape. But yeah, you take away about 21 points or so easily off the Eagles, and that's a much more competitive game heading into the fourth quarter. So Washington, again, we said overachieved a little, but did themselves proud. And if they can stay healthy and focused, they should be a factor in the NFC East. And the Bears hiring Ben Johnson, I think he was the flashier of the two Detroit coordinators that got hired away. Like, if they listen to what he's preaching, and if he's got a good game plan in place, then they have that ability to go like the Commanders did, from 4-13 to the NFC title game in the snap of a finger. So the Niners, to me, just flat out underperformed, were racked with injuries. They should have been better. And so, as far as I'm concerned, any changes they make here is just trying to regain some sort of equilibrium. But again, the Bears, it's early to pronounce them, NFC North favorites, but they have that potential. And speaking of the NFC North, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't briefly touch on the disappointment of the Detroit Lions. Not just that they're feeling disappointed, but it kind of called this whole crazy NFL thing into question for me. When you can play dominant football for 17 weeks through the bye, through September, November, December, and then get a first-round playoff bye to get home field throughout all the playoffs, the Super Bowl route runs through your stadium, and then to just be dispatched, with nary a whimper in the divisional round. I don't know. I mean, to me, that's as bad as the Niners going 6-11 and completely underperforming and disappointing their fans or what have you. Like, how can any Detroit fan or player think that was a good year, even though they had the most wins in franchise history in the regular season, and all throughout the year they looked, pretty much like they were headed towards New Orleans. I mean, gentlemen, you guys sound off on it. I know there's moral victories, and it just, yeah.
Then their coaching staff falls apart.
Well, then, yeah.
They lost both of their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator. So now what? What are they going to do there? And I told you before, too, I am not in favor of a first-round bye. If I'm that team, I don't want that. I'd rather get out there, play a game of football, and keep moving through those playoffs, because you can't get the same reps, obviously, leading up to that playoff game as you would, in practice, as you would just playing the game. I do not like the first-round bye. I just don't think that's a good thing. One more quick point that you brought up that I think is very, very important. Say what you want about Roger Goodell, but your point about the NFL dominating year-round is an excellent point. He took Christmas away from the NBA.
Yeah.
Because that is when the NBA season kind of ramps up, and to me, that's when they start going into where it starts becoming relevant. And here he goes, steps all over them, and takes that away. And then and year-round stories, to your point, there's always something going on. There's always a bunch of movement. And I just think it's genius. So say what you want about him. I know he's not very well, at least my understanding is he's not very well liked. But boy, oh boy, if I'm an NFL player or an owner, anything like that, I love this guy as much as NBA owners used to love David Stern.
Yeah.
Because that man totally revolutionized the NBA, helped get it to the point it's at now, which now it's starting to flail a little bit. Adam Silver's having some issues here. But Roger Goodell, I think you're worth every penny that you're paid, my friend.
I agree. It's tough when you don't have Michael Jordan in the league. I mean, to be honest, who's the player, right? In terms of the NBA, I'm glad they took Christmas back to the NFL, because I like Christmas Day games. I do. I don't even care who's playing. About the Detroit Lions, they had a great season this year. I have been in that position as a Packers fan, watching my team have 15 wins, going into a first-round bye on top of the world, and then losing in the divisional round. We've done it before a couple of times, I think. Maybe not with 15 wins, but we've done it before, and we've lost how many championship games to the 49ers or the Seahawks, heartbreakers, and you look back at the season like, damn, was that as good as we thought it was? It was. It's still a great season, and I think the real concern, which the Packers didn't have in those seasons, was the continuity change. The Detroit Lions are going to struggle next year, regardless of them keeping Dan Campbell, which I think they should. You're losing both your coordinators. That's going to be really tough. Really, really tough to come back and duplicate that success. They're probably not going to be a contender in the NFC North. I'm not going to put all my eggs in the Chicago basket either. I think they have a very promising hire in Eric Bieniemy, but he's been a head coach before, and it didn't go well. So I'm not putting a ton of faith in there, but they've got a lot of the components to make a great team. They were very underrated this year. A lot of those games were decided by a field goal or a score or less. It honestly, for them, could have been a Detroit-like year. You change 2-3 of those games. So, I think NFC North is still going to be a division to beat. I think it's going to be very, very tough. As far as the Packers go, coordinator Adam Stenovich is interviewing for the Texans head coaching job, I think. And I think the defensive coordinator I think the DC, they've still got some negotiating to do, but the special teams, Rich Bisaccia, got extended, so that's good. There'll be continuity there. I think it's good to lose Adam Stenovich. Personally, I hope he gets the Texans job. One, because I think he deserves it, and two, because we're pretty stale on offense, and that's why we lost those last couple of games. We should have won at least the wild card round that we played in. We should have won that game, but our offense was uncreative, and I know you watch the game, half the team is like stretchered off the field. You're not going to overcome that many injuries. But we were still very close despite that. We could have done better if we had a little bit better offensive playbook. And to be honest, the same plays were being run the last 5 years or so, whether it was LaFleur or Stenovich calling plays. I think Aaron Rodgers had a point that there was some limit to the offense's power to make adjustments on the field. Aaron Rodgers is also Aaron Rodgers, so take it with a grain of salt. And Jordan Love is still fresh. He's still a young QB despite being in the league a few years, because he's only started a couple of seasons now, and he's done incredibly well, all things considered. So I think it's looking good. I'm cautiously optimistic for next year. There's a lot of rumors around, Adams wanting to come back to probably play his last year or two in green and gold. I'd love to see it. We need a veteran presence like that, a leader in the locker room, especially in the wide receiving core. There's some talk about maybe dealing for DK Metcalf, which, boy, if you could get both, would be a huge win. And then I think you could focus in the draft on some of our other, problem areas, linemen. I still think we need corners. Pretty sure Jair Alexander is going to be gone in the offseason here. I think his deal's up. He'd be a great player to trade. He's still got a lot of value, got a lot of gas left in the tank. No love lost for Jair. I think he's a bit of a loudmouth, and I think he's a little overrated, but he's a good player. I don't want to take away from his talent. But I think his ship has sailed in Green Bay. I don't think we have a corner to replace him, but I think that, he's starting to get injury prone. He's a little old. He could go and make another team secondary a lot better. He's not doing us a lot of favors right now. And I think for both sides, it'd be a win to get a good deal, mutually part ways, maybe a trade to Seattle even. For DK Metcalf. I'd be open to that if I was, in charge. I may be an owner, but I don't make these decisions. I think, the Super Bowl matchup, granted, nobody wanted to see it, but I think it's going to be interesting. It'll be worth watching because, Kansas City's a known quantity. They've got a good passing attack. They've got a pretty good defense. What more can you say? I still think they aren't really battle tested, and I know I got lit up on TikTok about saying that before, but I really I don't know that anybody in the AFC has stood toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs and giving them a real run for their money. Yes, Baltimore's a tough team. I was right about Lamar Jackson. He was the liability in that game. Go figure. UrzaMaster was right. Look, Lamar's very talented. He played outstanding, and they had an amazing year. I don't know. The real battle test is going to be playing the Eagles, because Saquon Barkley, honestly, could be MVP, and Lord Uther called it. If you can't stop Saquon, they win. I mean, flat out. Defenses win championships, and the Eagles aren't one to slouch on defense, and they've got an incredible running attack that if you can't stop, you're going to get tired. And I think that's, to some extent, been the Achilles heel of the Kansas City Chiefs.
I want to throw that out there because it is an interesting. I think Lord Uther had mentioned it offline. Again, Barkley being the key. Now, think back to last year's Super Bowl, 49ers Chiefs rematch. There's no question that Christian McCaffrey last season was having an all-world year, both in the running game and in the passing game. I mean, they had briefly mentioned him for MVP, heading into the postseason, et cetera, et cetera. And let's be honest, Kansas City and Steve Spagnuolo came in and just they neutralized it to the point where he was a credible running back and offensive slot in the Super Bowl, but he was not the guy on the 49ers offense who was breaking through and scoring touchdowns and getting huge gains. That fell to Juwan Jennings, of all people, who was probably going to get Super Bowl MVP had the Niners prevailed. So they did neutralize McCaffrey, and you can argue statistics, metrics, whatever, but he was having the kind of season that Saquon Barkley was having this season. So I predict Kansas City will try to throw 8-9 men in the box early and try to frustrate Barkley. You're never going to completely, I don't think he's going to have 12 carries for 4 yards, but that's going to be their focus. So Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, they're going to have to loosen that up somewhere. They're going to have to make them hurt through the passing game, short, intermediate, however you want to do it. And then Saquon Barkley can just rumble through like Marshawn Lynch used to do behind Seattle Seahawks lines and chew them up. But I think the Chiefs, I think they know that they can put in a plan to shut him down because they did it with McCaffrey, who again was healthy and having one of those seasons, and he was just not the difference maker in the Super Bowl that Niners fans had believed that he would be. Like, oh, Christian McCaffrey, you can't stop him. Well, they pretty much did. I don't remember his total yardage, but I think it might have been under 100 yards, and then whatever he may have had receiving, So yes, but if Saquon's running wild, and the other key with Kansas City is, they've been down before in postseason runs. Like, they've fallen down by like 14, 13, couple of scores. And they don't ever panic and they don't ever get flustered. But what flusters them is when Mahomes is stalking off to the sidelines because he couldn't convert a 3rd and 4, and they're forced to punt. Like, it's those just, we shut down a drive. We didn't even get a fumble or a turnover or interception or whatever. We just, they couldn't get any rhythm going, right? It's a lot of 3 and outs, or they get a first down and then the next drive, the next series they have to punt. Like, you can frustrate Kansas City if they don't feel like, oh, we'll just have our will and march down to the end zone and kick a field goal with Butker and all of that. So I think Philadelphia needs to not worry about, oh, we got to get fumbles, we got to get interceptions. They just need to bring out the punter. Kansas City's punter needs to, kick it away 7, 8, 9 times in the Super Bowl, and then if anybody can. That's how you beat the Chiefs. And then they start throwing tablets. Oh, look at that! That's how you.
Cody, real quick to your point, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. So Lamar Jackson's QBR 84.9, Jalen Hurts 62.7, except if you look at the rushing stats, Saquon in the playoffs ran for, 442 yards, where Derrick Henry ran for 270. So it just kind of tells you the idea that the Eagles are using their dominant running back the way they need to set everything up. And it's not a knock against Lamar. All those, all our haters out there, which please continue to listen and share the hate. Lamar Jackson is a great quarterback. So at what point? So now we're at the point of, coaches can only coach so much, and then players have to take it from there at some point. But when the players are kind of doing what they're supposed to do, at what point do you switch out the coach? Right? So is there a change that should be made? I mean, does Harbaugh need to go? He's had a rough record here, like postseason wise. That's a whole nother discussion. But again, to me, Saquon is the MVP, and he's the key to the Super Bowl. If he runs wild, it's over. If the Chiefs hold him, then Chief experience sets up. Real quick. Well, we'll do our predictions here in a second. Here's my question to both of you. If the Chiefs win their third in a row, is Mahomes the GOAT?
No.
Yeah, I don't really think so. The franchise, because no team, the Niners tried this, 88, 89, and then were thwarted by the New York Giants in 1990. So the three-peat is impressive as a franchise, as in the complete sum of the parts. But again, no, I don't think that puts him at par with like a Tom Brady or any other of the greats. Yes, fantastic quarterback, Hall of Fame. Here he comes. But no, I don't see him as the GOAT. He's just right now he's excelling in a system, and he's got a great supporting cast. He's got coaching staff. He's got ownership behind him. He's got the fans. Like, they're riding that wave right now. In 5-6 seasons from now, when we're still even older and grayer, you're going to be looking at Kansas City at 4-13 and said, "Man, remember when these guys just kicked the barbecue out of everybody?" But yeah, so franchise absolutely becomes legendary. But Mahomes, I mean, he's already burnished his credentials. He's proven all his critics, what he needs to prove. But I don't think that puts him at that. I mean, yes, he's an upper echelon quarterback, all that, but I don't think he supplants Tom Brady, for example, as however.
Yeah, it's too early for that, for sure. Possible. I mean, if he plays another 10 years and goes to another even 4 or 5 Super Bowls, I mean, I think you could make that argument pretty strongly. I just don't think that's going to happen. I'm not saying that it couldn't. I don't know that Andy Reid is going to be around long enough, like a Bill Belichick, to, not that I think Andy Reid's going to die. I think he's going to retire. I love Andy Reid. I'd love to see him become like the next Bill Belichick. And I think he's definitely in that conversation of best coaches of all time. I mean, certainly if you look at the tree of people affected by Andy Reid, Brett Favre's on that list. It's pretty tough to reach that Tom Brady level of quarterbacking. And not only that, I think you, like Brady, have to prove that you could go to another team and duplicate that success. I don't know for sure that that's possible. And I don't know that really Mahomes cares to do that. I think he's really happy in Kansas City, and there's nothing wrong with being a franchise guy and just riding it out to retirement. I absolutely first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, I'm not going to argue there, but I don't know. I think it's too early to make that kind of statement.
All right,
How about replacing Andy Reid? How about replacing Andy Reid next season with Mike McCarthy?
No.
It's possible. Okay, real quick, just a yes or no. I just probably could have done a 45-second drill with some of these. But that's all right. Real quick, yes or no. Chiefs make the playoffs next year, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good.
So, our Super Bowl predictions.
Oh, that's right.
How are we leaning?
I'll go first. Fly, Eagles, fly. We all represent NFC teams, obviously. I don't want to see the Chiefs get that mythical three-peat that's been denied other teams that have set out on the quest, including my beloved Niners. So, yeah, I don't care if the Eagles do it 59-37 or if they do it 14-13 with a field goal at the very end. Just go ahead and take away that narrative. And you know what? I have no love for the Eagles at all. I know how the Niners, when Brock Purdy got hurt in the championship, that burned with me for a while. But it would be something for a team that basically lost 10 in a row to, a season ago, to then basically figure it out with basically the same cast and the same coaching staff to basically say, you know what, we're so much better than we showed in that epic collapse. And then here they are again on the biggest stage in the sport, and they have a chance for redemption. They honestly do. So they'll need a well-played game. They'll need to capitalize on any mistakes from the opponent. But how many sports teams and franchises and fan bases get to say, you know what, we absolutely blew it, and we felt terrible about it, and here's a chance to go out and even the scales. So fly, Eagles, fly.
31-28 Chiefs.
Ooh. All right. I struggle with this one. I think it's going to be a great match. As much as nobody really wanted this matchup, I think it's going to be a very entertaining game, back and forth. I don't think the Chiefs three-peat. They are not the Packers, the only team to three-peat championships. And I know people say it's not the Super Bowl era. I'm like, yes, that's true. I don't think they'll be the first three-peat Super Bowl era team. But I think there is a certain reverence of a three-peat that I'd love to see Andy Reid get. I really would. I don't think that team has quite what it takes. I also am not totally for the Eagles. I don't know that I care for the Eagles fan base all that much. I'm not a hater. It's just they tend to be a little more rude than I think they should be, especially because I don't think they've earned it. But I'm going to go Eagles here. I think this rides on the back of Saquon Barkley. I think it's going to be a shootout, though. Barkley, I think, is going to run for 3 touchdowns. I think he's MVP of the Super Bowl. And I think they finish up like a 35-28, 35-31, something like that. Eagles, I think, fall behind in the first half and come back in the third quarter and never look back. I think Jalen Hurts is the reason they come back, but Saquon wins that game for him. So look for Hurts to check down early in the third quarter to a long pass, just like Brett Favre did, and to change that momentum back, and the Eagles fly away with a win. I also think the halftime show is going to suck. So with that, we will catch y'all next time on Cut the Cheese, Poke the Bear, Roast the Niner, and as always, may your best team win, NFL.